Specialized interventions is like what you would do when somebody has, therapy, trauma. When somebody has trauma. Now, somebody can have physical trauma. There's all different types of trauma, right? Somebody can have physical trauma. Something happened to them, in any time that situation seems like it's going to present itself. Let me give you an example. You get robbed at gunpoint at a gas station and the guy had on a red jacket. So now you're walking in the mall, you see somebody with a red jacket, your nervous system goes off and says, run, right? So you're having a traumatic reaction, even though there's no harm present, okay? So for that, you might have to do what we call some psychoeducation. You have to explain to the person what's going on, help them to understand, and then you do some reframing. In other words, Allah does this in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're at IOK, and there's a lot of huffaz here, right? So we've got to get this right. But in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, perhaps you like something which is bad for you. And you dislike that which is good for you. Allah knows and you don't know, right? This is reframing. This is showing you something that may not be what it appears. And many times you have to do that with people who have experienced trauma, right? You help them to see that they could possibly benefit when they overcome the trauma. You can understand this directly from the Quran. Directly from the Quran. Now, when has anyone had trauma? Anybody had trauma? From the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Who had trauma? When can you imagine that the Muslims were like, oh my God, what just happened to us? Anyone? Who said it? MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan. The Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud, it took a toll on the Muslims, boy. All right? And Allah addressed it. Allah addressed it over and over again in the Quran. All right? And just to save time, all right, I'm going to kind of go through this very quickly. All right? So I'll start with this one where he's explaining to them. He says, do not grieve, right? Do not lose heart and do not grieve. After the Battle of Uhud, there was over 70 brothers that were lost during the Battle of Uhud, right? They're with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they never thought that they would lose. So to lose, that's trauma. That's traumatic. And so Allah is telling them, don't lose heart and don't grieve, right? You have to gain mastery if you have true faith. Okay? But He also educates them. He tells them what they did wrong too. Right? There's many, many verses. I just want to, just touch on this a little bit. The point I want to make here is this. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not do, He didn't tell them that they needed to pray more. He did not tell them that they needed to read more Quran. He addressed the issue, but He also encouraged them. Right? Don't lose heart. Don't grieve. You're the uppermost. At the same time where He's telling them, you're going to be okay. So in this next verse, He tells them, He says, after the excitement of the distress, He sent down calm on a band of you, overcome with slumber, while another band was stirred to anxiety by their own feelings. Remember who we're talking about. These are the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah is addressing them. This trauma that you had, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. He's saying they feel anxiety. And then He says they were moved by wrong suspicions of Allah. Right? Suspicions due to ignorance. And they said, what affair is this of ours? This is a traumatic response. right? You're trying to make sense of what happened. And so you're just grasping for whatever comes. And so Allah is spelling it out. Sometimes this is what happens when people are traumatized. This is what happens. But then he tells Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to be with them. And I'll end with this. He tells Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is right after the battle of Uhud. What happened after the battle? Like, why did the Muslims lose? Because they didn't obey. They didn't obey. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, some of the archers, stay here, don't move. No matter what happens, don't move. They moved. And so Allah wanted to teach them discipline. And sometimes that's what people come to us for as therapists. They come to us like, I can't control myself. Help me, teach me the way, how do I control myself? This is what Allah is doing. And Uhud never happened again because they learned that lesson. Okay? So Allah is giving them discipline, and we extract all of this as therapists. We extract it and say, okay, this is what we have to do. So he told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam how to deal with them. He said, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. It is by the mercy of Allah that you are gentle with them. لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا. If you were harsh, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, hard-hearted, they would just flee from around you. You see? They disobeyed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It caused them to lose 70 people. They were traumatized. Allah caused it anxiety. He tells them, don't lose heart, don't grieve. And then he tells Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, be gentle with them. This is the therapeutic process. This is what we have been doing for over 1400 years, okay, as Islamic psychologists, therapists.